Security? Call Alpha One Plus Limited, a strategic security resourcing platform that connects you with licensed security personnel. We cater for our clients' security needs, from manned guarding, door supervision, event security, all the way up to close personal protection. Alpha One Plus Limited, your one-stop security solution. Call now at 44-074-2526-7909 or send us an email on info@alphaoneplus.com.
You are listening to Jambo Radio Scotland, online, on your smart speakers and on DAB Digital Radio in Edinburgh and Glasgow. You can download the Jambo Radio app now on Google Play and the App Store. Now it is time for the Science Show with Dr. Dada.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. Would it be possible for us to get the jingle for this song, for this show? The high life song at all, because that sets up the show very nicely, doesn't it? Well, yeah, let's see if we can get that. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. DJ.
This is the Science Show with Dr. Dada. It's just so nice, you cannot do without. This is the Science Show with Dr. Dada. It's just so nice, you cannot do without.
Yeah, you see, that's the 60s vibe there. So yes, this is the Science Show with Dr. Dada, and today we're going to be going into something very, very interesting. Have you ever wondered if we're truly alone in the universe? Now, that's a question that's baffled scientists and, everyone, in fact, for a long time. Imagine a world where alien life is potentially just lurking beneath the ice, or where rockets soar through the sky and land back on Earth like something out of a sci-fi movie. Well, that's actually not the future. That's happening right now. And today we're going to be going into NASA's mission to explore one of the most mysterious moons in our solar system and the cutting-edge technology that's pushing the boundaries of space travel. So please buckle up, because this is going to be one cosmic ride that you wouldn't want to miss. Well, this is the Science Show on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting live from the city of Glasgow. And my name is Dr. Adetomi Dada. I present this show. I am a lecturer in optics at the University of Glasgow. And I'd like to take this opportunity to mention our sponsors, IOP Scotland and EPSRC through the University of Glasgow Impact Acceleration Account, as well as Jambo Radio, and of course, also shouting out to all the staff here at Jambo Radio making this broadcast possible. So don't forget that you can listen to the show on DAB. You can also watch us live on YouTube. So head over to our YouTube channel if you have the means to do so, and you can see the pictures as well along with the audio. Now, this week, the title of the show is To Infinity and Beyond. What do advances in space exploration mean for you? Perhaps you've seen so many headlines and so many posts on social media about the amazing feat that has been achieved over the weekend with regard to the space launches and the rocket being captured by, what's it called? I forgot what it's called now, but we'll get to it. So if you've seen all these things, perhaps you're so excited about it, you're so fascinated by it. Well, today we're going to go into that. We're going to take you billions of miles away, to start with, to Jupiter's moon. And this moon is called Europa. Now, this is something I came across recently. Some very interesting articles about NASA's Europa Clipper mission. That's the name of the mission. And trust me, this is not your average space probe launch. This is another level. Now, this thing, this Europa Clipper probe is a behemoth. It is huge. It's the largest spacecraft NASA has ever built for a mission like this. And it's on a quest to answer one of humanity's oldest questions, which is, are we alone in the physical universe? Are we alone? As far as the physical universe is concerned, is this just Earth? Is life only on Earth? Are there aliens out there? Now, what makes this mission even more intriguing is the destination, as we mentioned. Perhaps we can pull up the picture for those of us who are watching to see the first picture. This picture shows the processed true color image of Jupiter's moon, Europa. And perhaps we can see that. Now, that picture was taken actually in 2022 by another probe, Juno. So, yes, there it is. So you can see it looks very interesting, doesn't it? Very interesting surface. Actually, it is more white, this Europa, this moon. And this side of Europa that we can see in the picture is the one that is facing, that usually faces Jupiter, actually faces Jupiter at all times. Now, what about Europa? What makes it fascinating? Well, it's not just another celestial body floating out there in space. It is something that scientists call an ocean world. An ocean world. Sounds like the title of a movie, I know. And that's because beneath its icy surface lies a hidden ocean. Now imagine a world that's covered with ice, but under the ice you have liquid ocean. Now this hidden ocean, this body of water is so vast, it makes all of the Earth oceans combined look tiny. If you think about the volume of water that it contains. And this hidden ocean is warmed by the gravitational pull of Jupiter, and scientists they're just so fascinated by it and the potential that, as far as we know, everywhere that we've been able to probe that has water has life. And so the big question is, could life be in this ocean, this vast body of water on Europa? Well, might alien life be swimming around in that giant under ice ocean? Well, that's an exciting question to ponder, isn't it? But the question is, how do we even begin to search for life in such a situation? It's such an extreme environment. Remember, this is so far away from Earth. And so that's the big question. And that's where this Europa Clipper comes in. This fantastic feat of engineering, this probe and this mission. Now, this Europa Clipper mission, this probe is equipped with 9 cutting-edge science instruments that hopefully will help unlock that mystery. Now, you can think of the Europa Clipper as a Swiss Army knife of space exploration. So as you know, a Swiss Army knife has so many different tools in it. Maybe a little drill, maybe, a little knife, a little a file, and so on. Now, in this case, it's packed with so many tools in a similar way. It has high-resolution images that will capture detailed pictures of the surface of this moon. But here's the thing. We're not just interested in the surface of Europa, right? We're interested in what's beneath that layer, that icy surface. And so to do that, the Clipper is also equipped with a special ice-penetrating radar. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. This radar will map the thickness and structure of Europa's icy shell, and then hopefully give some insight into what lies beneath that shell. So it's like an ultrasound, if you like. It's like giving that moon an ultrasound. Yeah. And yeah, that's a picture there for those who are watching. You can see the comparison between the size of Earth, our moon, Earth's moon, and this moon that orbits Jupiter, this Europa moon. You can see the comparison of the sizes there. It's quite interesting to see, isn't it? Well, that's not all. Regarding the instruments on this mission, one of the most exciting instruments on board will analyze the plumes of water vapor that erupt from Europa's surface. So that's a phenomenon on the surface of this moon, Europa. So the plumes of water, they're going to be, capturing that and analyzing it to see whether there's any sign of life, whether there's any microorganisms. And you might remember seeing images a few years ago of those plumes that were kind of captured, like little geysers shooting out from Europa's south polar region. Now, these hopefully give a glimpse into what's hidden below the ice. That's the ocean itself. Now, this mission will be collecting and analyzing dust and gas particles from these plumes and searching for clues about the chemistry of the ocean and potentially signs that, something living might be there. So let's imagine a little bit. Let's think ahead. What kind of life might we find in the ocean, if there's anything there? Is it like little green men, or something like something similar to what we see in a sci-fi movie when we talk about aliens? Well, probably not, because of the extreme sort of nature of the atmosphere and the situation on that moon. But what we might find might be maybe even referred to as more fascinating, and they are extremophiles. Extremophiles, they're a class of organisms. These are organisms that thrive in conditions that would be lethal to most life forms, just because of the sort of extreme temperatures and pressures, or conditions that they can be found in. So think of things like boiling hot springs, or crushing pressure of the deep sea, or environments with very little oxygen. So extremophiles are remarkable because they show how life can exist, or maybe even adapt under such extreme environments on other planets, maybe on our planet in extreme conditions, or maybe on moons. Now, what would this mean? Finding evidence of extremophiles on Europa, even microbial life, would be a game changer, would be an absolutely amazing or big discovery. And that would be so because it would indicate that life in some form might far be more common in the universe than we ever imagined. That means in the physical universe. Now, the possibility that that could be the case is mind-blowing. That's something that has not been confirmed anywhere before. Now, as we explore the possibility of alien life, there's something else that's super exciting that we got to know about over the weekend, and that's the exciting technology that could one day take us to these different worlds, right? So SpaceX, for example, is working on something extraordinary with their Starship program, and that is in a whole other league of ambition, because as we know, they've set their eyes and their minds to visit Mars. Now, the latest Starship test flight was nothing short of remarkable, as we saw over the weekend. Perhaps we could see the picture there. So yes, that's it. You can see the rocket booster, the giant rocket. In fact, that rocket, as we see, that booster and the rocket, it dwarfs the Statue of Liberty. Just to give you an idea of what the size is. It stands at about 400 feet tall. That's huge, isn't it? And if you've seen the pictures, you'll see it's really hard to wrap your head around the idea that something so huge flies, lifts off and flies. In fact, as Elon Musk himself put it, he said it's the biggest, flying object that man has ever built. So it's really, really something interesting. It looks like something out of a sci-fi epic, doesn't it? But what really caught my attention was the plan, or the mechanism in place to catch this rocket. Now, this rocket booster is called using giant robotic arms, and they call them quais, like the Chinese chopsticks. So that's the kind of how it looks. It's quite interesting. If we keep the picture up for a bit longer. So yeah, you can see it there, just waiting to catch something so huge, so heavy, falling out of the sky, long distance away, and somehow it just happens to do that. It's just really, really impressive technology, isn't it? Now, SpaceX has outfitted this launch tower with these massive robotic arms to catch the booster mid-air as it returns to the launch pad. Now, this feat of engineering is something that is not short of a miracle, you could say. It looks like a miracle of technology, doesn't it? And the incredible precision that's required. And if you see the video, there's a camera mounted on the actual rocket booster itself. If you see the way it lands on it, there's no sort of banging or anything like that. It lands so soft, and everything's just absolutely perfect. Incredible precision. And it just makes you think of the complex system, all the hydraulics, the sensors, the guidance systems that allows this to happen, allows them to track the sensors, the booster in its trajectory in real time and adjust accordingly with such precision. Now imagine trying to catch something as small as a pencil falling from a skyscraper, for example. Now, in this case, it's not a pencil, it's a huge multi-ton rocket booster traveling at supersonic speeds. That seems like an impossible feat, doesn't it? Of course, it's all automated, which is what makes it possible in this case, but it's still mind-blowing. But this whole idea of reusability is a game changer for space exploration, because this is what drives, remember, the SpaceX mission is that they want to create something that allows us to go to space and come back at much reduced cost, because we can reuse the boosters for the rockets. And that's the whole idea behind this. And to kind of get the sense of why this is something interesting, why this makes sense to do, think about if you had to build an airplane for each flight. Think about it. How much would it cost to fly? It would be astronomical, wouldn't it? It would be impossible to afford for a common person. Until SpaceX, that's how rockets have worked. Basically, each time you launch, you basically build a rocket and it gets blown up or whatever, gets lost in space, and that's it. But now each launch can be done, and the rocket booster can be reused for another launch, and that's really nice, isn't it? Because then we're drastically reducing the costs for each launch from hundreds of millions of dollars to potentially just tens of millions per launch, or maybe even thousands, or tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this kind of cost reduction then would revolutionize space travel, because then it makes it accessible. It reduces the barrier to entry for space travel. And this will be the case not just for governments, but also for space agencies, potentially for private companies or even researchers or individuals as well. And so you can see this goes beyond just saving money. Reusability is also significant when it comes to reducing the environmental impact of space travel and other related activities. So it makes it cheaper, it makes it more sustainable, and it's a win-win really for the future of space exploration. But if we take a moment and zoom out for a bit, what's the long-term goal here? Well, this Starship isn't just about making space more affordable, but it's a key player in NASA's Artemis program. Remember, we talked about that in a few episodes ago. Now, this Artemis program has the aim to land astronauts back on the moon. And not just for a quick visit. They really want to create a base on the moon so that there can be a permanent presence on the moon. So that's going to be very interesting, a permanent lunar base. And of course, starships like this will be crucial for delivering large payloads of potentially crew and the supplies to the moon. And beyond that, SpaceX has this ultimate ambition to make humanity a multiplanetary species. That's a very interesting expression, a multiplanetary species. So you have, the colony on Mars, for example, and colony on other sort of maybe a moon, orbiting the planet and so on. So that's going to be very interesting. It's like next level ambition. And Elon Musk himself summed it up nicely. He said, this effort is science fiction without the fiction part. So yeah, you get the idea there. It's hard not to get swept up in the excitement of all this. Over the weekend, you could see online everywhere you look, you see, StarX, the launch and the chopsticks catching the rocket and all that. It's really, really interesting. It's an incredible time to be alive. This incredible time source for space exploration. So on the one hand, we're on the verge of this possibility of discovering life on a moon that's billions of miles away. But on the other hand, we're developing these amazing technologies that could one day take us to these distant worlds in person, And that really speaks to how far we've come when it comes to the understanding of space and the technologies that enable the exploration of space, and how indeed we can do that. So both of these stories, this Europa Clipper and SpaceX Starship, as two sides of the same coin. And it's been a big weekend really for space exploration. I'm sure you'll agree. So that's one of the highlights that we have this week. In fact, one of our major stories that we're covering on the show this week. And with that, we've come to our first music break, and we're going to be listening to Science. So this is a song that was composed for the show by us on this show, and it just speaks to the different aspects of developments in science that we like to talk about on the show, on the Science Show with Dr. Dada. So this is Science by Tana Musica, and after that, we'll be right back.
New on the radio, there's a science show where the pros help us learn and grow, keep us in the know. Tune in and follow us, come join us, we discuss. Let's unwind, challenge your mind. The Science Talk Show. We're live from Glasgow on Jambo Radio. The Science Talk Show. We're live from Glasgow on Jambo Radio. Bring you the latest news through the interviews we enthuse, give you expert views, knowledge you can use. Atoms to galaxies, so many mysteries. All the way we learn and play. The Science Talk. We're live from Glasgow on Jambo Radio. The Science Talk Show. We're live from Glasgow on Jambo Radio. Talk about the stars up high, planets in our sky, rockets fly, how dinosaurs died, warping space and time. Study the universe, its secrets so vast. You discern, there's much to learn. The Science. We're live from Glasgow on Jambo Radio. The Science Talk Show. We're live from Glasgow on Jambo Radio.
Yes, that is Science. That was Science by Tana Musica, and it is about this show, the Science Show with Dr. Dada. And this show is broadcasting on Jambo Radio Scotland live from Glasgow. And we'd like to take this opportunity again to shout out to our sponsors, that is IOP Scotland. We'd like to say thank you to Jambo Radio, everyone here on Jambo Radio. We'd like to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. And it's a really nice time to talk together about science on this show. If you'd like to chip in with the discussion, please feel free to pick up your phone and call. The number to call is 0141 530 2787. And that is 0141 530 2787. And you'll come right through to the Science Show with Dr. Dada. Let's share our thoughts together. If you have any, nuggets to share with us regarding the exploration, the developments in space technology that we witnessed over the weekend, please do feel free to chip in. So now we're going to go into another headline that caught my eye in the media, and that is AI in medicine. And this is about repurposing old drugs for new cures. Yeah, you heard that right. That's very fascinating. You're using AI to take all the, library of drugs that we have, and we're using them to cure new diseases or rare diseases. Well, what's this all about? Let's see. Imagine if we could take like every medical textbook there is, every research paper, everything we know about medicine, and just throw it into an AI and say, well, boom, this is all the information we've got. Find us some cures for some of the diseases. So like, find us those hidden connections that we've missed, you know? So what if a drug we've been using for one condition could actually treat an entirely different disease? I mean, there's nothing that says that couldn't be the case, right? There's so many different drugs that interact with the body in different ways, different complex ways. Perhaps maybe a drug that we didn't know could work for something else would be able to work for something else. Or indeed, maybe a combination of 2 drugs or 3 drugs in some way would actually treat another disease. Now, this is what this new paper is all about. So the title of the paper is A Foundation Model for Clinician-Centered Drug Repurposing, and it's published in Nature Medicine, right? So Nature Medicine 2024, you can find that paper and you'll see, you'll be able to read all about this story. Now, it turns out that it's not as crazy as it sounds, you know, that you say, okay, what if you use a different drug to cure a disease? And that's what we're going to be looking into today. This AI is called TXGNN. Now, this name sounds a bit, it's not very catchy as a name, TXGNN. But what this AI does is absolutely groundbreaking. Specifically, we're talking about how this AI could be a huge deal when it comes to, you know, rare diseases. Now, that's so needed. You know, cures for rare diseases is so important right now, because out of the 7,000 known rare diseases, treatments exist for only a tiny percentage. Just a drop in the bucket. Just imagine, just a handful of 7,000 diseases. Now, for those who aren't familiar with what it means for a disease to be rare, the definition is that this condition affects a very small percentage of the population. So we're talking about a few thousand people or even fewer worldwide. And so because these diseases are so rare, there's usually very little funding for the research and, you know, funding for developing drugs and new ways to tackle these diseases or to cure them. And so drug companies, for example, they don't really put a lot of effort into investing in these diseases. Because the question that companies ask, as we know, companies are there to make money. It's all about profit, isn't it? So the question they'll ask is it profitable to do that? And sadly, you know, in the case of these rare diseases, the answer will be no, right? And that's where this AI comes in, this TXGNN. It comes in as a potential game changer when it comes to these diseases. Because what it does is it analyzes the mountain of data that's available. And it does that very fast and very cheap than, you know, the traditional ways to develop drugs. And so this AI, it becomes something very, very important, potentially game-changing when it comes to the treatment of these diseases. Now, when looking into this paper in Nature Medicine, it's very, very interesting. And if you look at it, you'll see what I mean. Because, you know, anything that's published in a Nature journal, you know, like Nature Medicine, is quite prestigious. It's something that's gone through rigorous peer review. And so you know that this is actually a big, you know, a huge deal. It's a serious research that we're talking about here. So let's think a little bit about this AI itself. What is it exactly? What does it do? The TXGNN AI. Now, it's what we call, or what they call in the field of AI, they call it a foundation model. Now, instead of looking at one disease at a time, imagine being able to build a massive foundation of medical knowledge. Yeah, so that's where the word foundation comes in. So, you know, everything we know about things like DNA, about cell activity, about drug interactions, all of it, pharmacology, all the knowledge, you know, in medical science, everything is dumped into this AI, is used to train this AI. So it's a bit like if you want to build a building, like a skyscraper, instead of creating a new skyscraper for each question, right? You build one massive foundation and then the TXGNN, this AI can make connections even between different diseases, even if they seem completely unrelated, right? And usually, as we know in science, a lot of, especially when it comes to the human body, a lot of the conditions, there are interactions between them. There are sort of connections between them. And we keep unveiling these connections as time goes on, don't we? And so this AI is really going to be very useful when it comes to these kind of situations. Now, this brings us to a big question. How does the AI actually figure out which drugs might work for what diseases, which rare diseases? Well, it comes down to what we call disease similarity. Now, let's say that this AI analyzes data from a well-studied condition. So a disease that's very well known, like high blood pressure, right? So it understands the underlying mechanisms. It knows what's happening at the cellular level, which genes are involved, how everything interacts, maybe even the rare genes, and all these underlying mechanisms. When it comes to another disease that shares the same underlying mechanisms, this AI understands how it all works, even if the symptoms are different, right? The AI knows which underlying mechanisms are the same and what connections there are between high blood pressure and, say, another disease. So it's a bit like uncovering these hidden connections that we probably would never notice just by looking at symptoms, right? It's a kind of medical detective work that goes on under the radar, as it were. So it's really something to look forward to when it comes to how it impacts the future of medical science. And the best part is that this is not just some theoretical thing, right? It's not something that someone says, oh, wow, it would be nice to build an AI that does this, right? It is actually real, Remember the Nature Medicine paper, we mentioned at the outset. So it's something that they actually did. They took to train this AI. They took 1.2 million patient records from the Mount Sinai Health System. So 1.2 million, that's a lot of data. Now, with this huge data set, they put it into the AI, this TXGNN AI, and the AI trained, on this data. And although it's not a clinical trial yet, it performs so well on real world data, and it's really promising to see that. So they absolutely found a lot of interesting things. So for example, in the paper, it involved, one of the studies that they did involved a rare genetic disorder called Kleefstra syndrome. Now, this is something pretty rare. You've probably never heard that before. But this syndrome, it causes developmental delays, intellectual disabilities, and often symptoms similar to autism, right? And so the issue is, in this case, is that certain neuronal pathways in the brain are underdeveloped, and these pathways become almost dormant. And for a long time, there were no effective treatments for this disease. People have just been, doctors have just been managing the symptoms. So when researchers fed the information about this Kleefstra syndrome into the AI, this TXGNN AI, it suggested something unexpected as a drug to help treat this symptom. And it's zolpidem. So this is a drug. Zolpidem is also known as Ambien. It's a sleep drug, sleeping medication. So at first you would think that's completely counterintuitive. That's not something that, human doctors would have come up with by themselves. Because how can you use a sedative to help someone whose brain is already underactive, right? It doesn't seem to make sense. But the fascinating part is that zolpidem works in a certain way. It works by acting on the GABA receptors in the brain. Now, these receptors are actually known as the brain's chill out system. And what they do is they calm down nerve activity. And imaging evidence suggests that in certain conditions, zolpidem can have a stimulatory effect. So although it's a sleeping drug, it it can have a stimulatory effect for certain neurological conditions. So it's a bit like jump starting a car with a dead battery, right? And so in kids, for example, this Cliff-Strauss syndrome can be treated with zolpidem because it might actually help them awaken those dormant neurons and help improve the cognitive function for them. And so this is very interesting, isn't it? Because in some cases, in some early clinical evidence, they found that zolpidem has improved things like speech, like motor skills and alertness in people with certain brain injuries and developmental disorders. So this is just one example of how the AI has helped them to point to a cure, a potential treatment that you wouldn't have come up with by using a human doctor. And this is quite fascinating, isn't it? It's quite interesting. And so, yes, thank you very much for that. It's deserving of an applause, indeed. And so it's clear to see, isn't it, that this technology has the power to reshape the future of healthcare, especially for those with rare diseases. You know, you have all these drugs that are there, sitting there, maybe not being used. And you have all these diseases that don't have a cure. And you have this AI now that can say, okay, actually, this disease can be treated using that drug that, was designed for something else. And so it's very interesting, isn't it? And it begs the question, what other medical mysteries might this AI or might AI in general unlock in the years to come? Well, that's something for us to think about, isn't it? So, yeah, it brings us to the next music break on our show. And for this music break, we're going to be listening to another track by Dada Musica. It's entitled Selenkejo, and we'll be right back.
Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n. Me I dey moto party o, but I don't know about you. If you hear the gbedu, you go bounce. You go start to the want to the dance. Me I bere mole ma jojo. I go vibe like a this, like a so. Cause this gbedu, it dey make me dey do. Oh yeah, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo majo, selenke jojo jojo. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. I beg you no waste this gbedu oh. I beg you no waste this gbedu. And you gats move your body too oh. So just put on your dancing shoes and start to the bust to the moves instead of to just the look as the dancing a 2x2. Cause this gbedu, it dey make me dey do. Oh yeah, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo ma jojo, selenke jojo. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Me I gbadun this gbedu oh. So may I have this dance with you oh. So not to shuffle am foot by foot. If na shoe you dey wear on a boot, and the music dey go to the root, to dey make it the vibe overshoot. Yeah, cause this gbedu, it dey make me dey do. Oh yeah, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo, selenke jojo majo, selenke jojo. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n bọ́n ṣe ń wò wá. Ẹ wò wọ́n.
Wow, that's a very catchy one, isn't it? That's Selenkejo by Dada Musica. And this is the Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting live from the city of Glasgow. And again, I would like to use this opportunity to thank our sponsors, IOP Scotland and the University of Glasgow. And it's really, really nice to be with you, to spend an evening with you, our listeners as well, to think about these amazing developments in science together. And once again, if you'd like to chip in, if you'd like to just call in to say hello and to share your thoughts on some of these announcements, these developments, please feel free to pick up your phone and call 0141 530 2787. And that's 0141 530 2787. So, what else do we have in store today from the world of science? Well, the third topic, the third highlight that we're going to be looking into is on how our brain cells compute the flow of time. So how brain cells compute the flow of time. It's a very interesting one, isn't it? Because I'm sure you've caught yourself checking the clock, like crazy, convinced that the clock is somehow messing with you. Perhaps some days it's a total blur. You're like, wow, I can't believe it. It's 5 p.m. already or something like that. Or some days it just feels like, oh, I can't believe it's still 10 a.m. It feels so slow today. It turns out that scientists are getting closer to figuring out how our brains actually experience time passing, right? It's true. It's really, really surprising. Now, there's this groundbreaking study out of UCLA and it's published in Nature, right? So this is another paper published in Nature. So Nature itself. In fact, I can tell you what the title is. It's entitled Human Hippocampal and Entorhinal Neurons Encode the Temporal Structure of Experience. I'll say that again. Human hippocampal and entorhinal neurons encode the temporal structure of experience. That's amazing, isn't it? The temporal structure of experience. Wow, it's like wonders will never end in the world of science. Now, let's go deep into this research. Now, into the brain, how it works. So for ages, we've known that some parts of the brain are key for navigating space, right? So for example, how do I know I'm here after a while and I want to go somewhere else? How do I know how to navigate back to where I came from? Now, it's a bit like mental maps that help us to get us around. Our brain has that sort of map in your mind. You have a spatial awareness of where you are and where you want to get to and how you can get there, right? Now, what's wild is that now this study suggests that our brains might use a similar system for navigating, wait for it, time, right? So navigating time. So, where I was yesterday or where I was 5 minutes ago, and what the future is going to be, what going to the next second or next minute is like. So it's a bit like we have a mental map for how long it takes to do things, so like make our coffee, for example, or how long it takes to listen to the show, for example. Now, that's the idea. So these researchers were actually able to study neurons in the human brain, and this is the first. So this kind of study is the first of its kind. And what they found was that as we go through a series of events, certain neurons fire in a specific order. That's amazing, isn't it? So the neurons fire in a specific order, and it's a bit like time stamping each event. So if you know what time stamping is, people who are familiar with programming will know what this time stamp is. It's a bit like when you take a picture and you have that little, piece of text on the picture that tells you the date and the time the picture was taken. It's a bit like that. So that's what time stamping is. So it feels like the brain has a system of doing that for each event. It puts a time stamp on it. And so they're calling these neurons time cells. So instead of having just one big clock in the brain that's setting the time, what we have is a bunch of little cells that stamp the events or stamp what we see. And that's quite interesting, isn't it? But it gets better because these time cells, they're not just passively recording when things happen, right? They're actively learning the patterns and even predicting what might happen next. And that's really cool when you think about it. And not just the phenomenon, the fact that it happens, but the fact that they're able to figure that out. It's really, really amazing. So the way that they did it in a nutshell is that they took some participants, so people, some volunteers, and they showed them some images, right? And the order in which the images were shown was determined by a pyramid-shaped graph. So although these participants themselves had no idea about this hidden pattern, that there was a pattern to these images, they thought they were just looking at pictures. But over time, these participants' brain activity started to mirror the hidden pyramidal structure. So their brains were subconsciously figuring out the pattern, and even they weren't aware of it. But the brains were doing that, and it was really incredible actually to think about this. But what gets even more interesting is the fact that they found some neurons, certain neurons called relational neurons, and these neurons became super tuned into these tasks. They were firing away like crazy, so to speak. And what makes these neurons so special is that they weren't just reacting to the images themselves, they were reacting to when the images were seen in relation to other images in the sequence. So somehow these neurons were kind of saying, hey, I've seen that image before, I've seen that picture before, and it usually comes after that one, So it's amazing how our brains, they're building these intricate timelines, and we don't even know it. We're not even aware of it. And it's not just about what we experience, it's about when we experience it. And again, you could add, it's not just about when we experience it, it's about, when we experience it in relation to other events as well. So, these relational neurons, they're connecting all the dots between what we see, when we see it, when we saw it with regard to when we saw something else. So it's a very important and interesting discovery because it shows us that in the world, in our brains, things don't just happen randomly. There's a flow to how it happens, and our brains are constantly making these mental highlight reels, as it were. Not just thinking about the big events, but remembering when they happened and even anticipating what might happen next. Now, what we're really saying here, or what we're really curious about here, is, what's the point of our brains trying to predict the future? Is it just a neat trick, or is there some more to it? Well, it just shows us that our brains are wired for survival. And to survive, you need to find a way to anticipate danger, for example, right? So you see that this is actually a life or death sort of skill or ability when it comes to our brains. So for example, if you see a car speeding towards you, you don't want to just wait to see what's going to happen, right? Until it's too late to jump out of the way. Your brain has the ability to predict, that danger and scream, move now, because it can see the sequence of events and see what's likely to happen later. And so this ability to predict is essential, not just for safety, but for everything that we do, from navigating traffic to having a normal conversation, for example. And so we could say our brains are constantly running these simulations in the background, trying to stay ahead of realities, trying to anticipate what comes next. And the more that we experience, the better that we get at running these, so-called simulations. So it's so amazing. So time cells, before this study, I hadn't heard of time cells before. And so it's just absolutely amazing that these cells, they're not just about remembering the past, but also they help us navigate the present. They help us to situate ourselves in the moment and even prepare for what happens in the future. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? So this brings us to the most exciting implications of this research, and that's that it could change how we understand and treat memory disorders, right? So this is talking about applications here. So things like Alzheimer's disease, where the ability to recall events and experiences is disrupted, or just imagine being able to target these time cells directly, being able to deliver some treatment to them, maybe even strengthen the connections that they make. That could absolutely revolutionize care or memory care. But what about, those of us who don't have memory issues? Is there anything in this research that could benefit you? Well, absolutely. For example, this could open doors to enhancing cognitive function in general. So, our ability to process information, imagine being able to train our brain to get better at making, decisions, making those temporal connections, boosting our memory, our focus, decision making, just by tapping into our brain's natural time mapping abilities. And think about it, even with AI, imagine AI, using these tricks, these new discoveries to develop AIs that can learn in real time, just like we do. That's something interesting. So until now, we don't have AI that learns in real time like we do. But now, understanding how the brain works, how the brain does this, can help us to develop such AI systems. And, so there's so much application, from treating tough diseases to creating super advanced AI. These are just examples of potential applications of these sort of new discoveries. And this is just one study. So it's absolutely amazing, isn't it, what we can get from the scientific discoveries that are happening right before our very eyes in this time. Anyway, endless possibilities. This takes us to our third music break. We're going to listen to another track entitled Lovely by Dada Musica, and we'll be right back.
Only you they give me a ginger. No man can put us asunder. God Almighty join us together. True love is such a wonder. So you make the stars align. Not just because you are fine, yeah, but you have the beautiful mind. You're just so lovely, lovely, lovely. I will be best and come be fine like it is. Everything just perfect as it is. The moon in the cheek and a nice white teeth. In the mind you discreet. Crown of the head to the feet. Everything's sweet. And when you smile it's over. You make me thank Jehovah. Omo, you shock me gone now, and I am flabbergasted somehow. Cause every time you raise those eyebrows, I'm feeling very, very grateful that you're mine. How it feels, loving you is so unreal. To hold you close as I breathe. Oh, you make me so complete. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I will be best and come be fine like it is. Everything just perfect as it is. The bull in the cheek and a nice white teeth. In the mind she discreet. Crown of the head to the feet. Everything's sweet. And when she smiles it's over. She makes me thank Jehovah.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. DJ, for playing that song. That was Lovely by Dada Musica, and this is the Science Show with Dr. Dada here on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. So to wrap up our show tonight, we're going to share a couple of science jokes. So the first one I'm going to share is really talking about the space, some of the discoveries in space technologies that we witnessed over the weekend. So please don't laugh. It's very dry, okay? Just to warn you. So the joke says, why did the astronaut break up with their partner? I'll give you 2 seconds to figure out the answer to that one. Why did the astronaut break up with their partner? Well, if you got it, give yourself a round of applause. The answer is they needed space. So that's a very, very interesting one. So if you got that, give yourself a round of applause. Very good. Okay, so here's another one. Now, why don't programmers like nature? Why don't programmers like nature? Yeah, this is a bit of an easy one, I would say. Well, the answer is it has too many bugs. Very good. Okay, let's share another one. So this one, it says, I told a time travel joke, but you didn't get it until tomorrow. And that's it. So that's quite an interesting one, isn't it? I told a time travel joke, but you didn't get it until tomorrow. So yeah, I'll leave you to wrap your head around that. And with that, we've come to the end of our show today. We're so happy to have you with us on the show today. Of course, as you know, you can go to our YouTube channel to get all the updates on our show. And it's really, really a pleasure to spend this evening with you. We would like to extend a thank you to our crew here at Jambo Radio Scotland and to our sponsors, including the IOP Scotland. And with that, this is Dr. Dada signing off. And until next time, stay curious.